Well, thanks for staying with us on the program. At this point in time, I'm joined by Amonye Simon Moses. Good morning to you, sir.
Good
and welcome
morning.
to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, on the topic of discuss this morning is the oil license lease, with the court adjourning the suit between Dangote Refinery and the NMDPR. Now, whilst that is the more burning issue, a lot of people are looking to draw some fine lines between the margins, especially off the back of the 2024 quality control dispute between the NMDPR and Dangote over his quality of diesel. And it came out after findings that indeed Dangote had one of the best qualities you could find in the world. Now, and I don't know if that is the basis or the background to this issue between the NMDPR and Dangote and why they find themselves in court. I know overarchingly people just talk about the fact that yes, the licenses would also downplay in his stakes in the Nigerian downstream sector. But for you, do you think that there was bad blood before that, or is it part of the oil politics?
Maybe I'll go with the latter. It seemed to be part of the oil politics. The Dangote is just pointing out something that the NNPC, and that's its subsidiary, if I may say, it's one of its components, trying to play around with or trying to work around with. You've given Dangote the license to refine oil and to distribute it in country. And now you're still giving people licenses to import same product from outside of the country. So naturally, it's going to create some kind of conflict, some kind of issues, and then that just seems to be the problem right now. However, like you said, there seems to be some bad blood after all, because I can't produce the best quality oil in the world, and then you come out and tell the world that my oil is bad. Of course, I'm going to find a way to get back at you. So I think that's what Dangote is just trying to do, or the refinery now, maybe not the person, but the refinery trying to do and just saying, hey, something is wrong here. Maybe we should all take a look at it.
Now, let's talk about the suit filed before the Federal High Court in Abuja. Yesterday, on Monday, saw the beginning of the hearing.
Yeah.
What the suit looks to do is to actually halt the issuance of these licenses, not to even talk about allowing for any playing field for more players in that importation business. Do you think that prayer before the Federal High Court would have sufficient grounds for probably a halting of license issuance?
This should have been done like 5 years ago, in my opinion. This is not something that we should be talking about today. However, the only challenge I have, which may seem to be the bias I may also seem to carry, is that it's only Dangote that is a major refinery and private-owned refinery in Nigeria, and then the other ones are government-owned and all of that. If there were 3-4 refineries around, I would just, in fact, this should be 5 years ago. But since it's just Dangote that is refining oil, and I think according to what they quoted from what I read on one of the news outlets that sent out, they're saying that if you have sufficient oil, that's refined product now within country, then there's no need to grant licenses to any other person outside. But again, we must still ask ourselves, do we have sufficient oil? So I think that may be the argument that the government or the NNDPR may just bring up. Do we have enough oil to go around? Is one refinery, should all the government refineries go back to status quo as they used to be before, where nothing seemed to be coming out of them? Do we have enough oil to be energy secure, relying only on this one refinery? So that's where I have my own bias. But
your bias is quite grounded, and it also is in line with what Dangote Refinery also filed and prayed before the courts of law. He says that in keeping with the PIA and its provisions, that the NMDPR is only mandated to issue such licenses when we have shortfalls.
Yes.
But the challenge now is, statistically speaking, with the data available to us, even as occasioned by the 2025 budget, our projections of 1.8 million barrels per day. Where we are now, even with Dangote as the largest single train refinery, we're not meeting on the 1.8. Worry is they're about 60% completed. Total capacity of, they're below the margins of 300,000 barrels per day. But Harcourt, they're about 650,000 barrels per day.
Yeah.
But even in adding all those numbers together, we still do not hit the benchmark we're keeping for ourselves.
Now, I need us, maybe you and our viewers, to understand something about this whole thing. We're talking about oil refined and oil on the market, well, oil on the street. That's petroleum, kerosene, diesel, and all of that. Now, the licenses that NNDPR is granting is for people to bring in this product.
The refined
Product. It's not the crude
The
we're
crude.
talking. No, it's a refined product. That's what Dangote is fighting now. My problem with this whole fight is that Dangote is a single refinery in Nigeria, and it's pursuing this. Should he succeed, now I'm not preempting anything, I hope I'm not infringing on anything here. Should he succeed, it is a terrible monopoly. That's what I want us to get. That's where my own bias comes. I am somebody that I'm averse to monopolies. I believe that there should be an open market where everybody is able to bring his wares and then do what they need to do in order to keep the prices kind of stable and balanced so that everybody can afford it. Should the court grant that prayer, then we have a situation whereby Dangote Refinery and its agencies will now have, one of the largest monopoly on oil and, on refined product in Nigeria. Now, will you want to be in that
as a player in that?
No. Will you want to be in that economy
where there is monopoly for Dangote alone? It's not healthy for any market.
No, that's where the problem will be. But however, he is right. Because if you're giving him this license and now telling people to bring in petroleum product, of course, something is wrong. However, we should have 2-3 other private refineries so that you have, even in country, you have a kind of a spread. And then I think that should be wise.
Now, additionally, he is also seeking for 100 billion naira in damages.
Yeah.
I see you laughing it off as well.
No, I'm not laughing it off, actually. I apologize if it comes that way. But
let's get your thoughts on it.
Okay. Yes, there is some damages, and I think that's where the issue of the bad blood you raise actually comes in, trying to do all of this. The courts eventually will come around it and then find somewhere to kind of maybe do. I believe the court will do, what's fair and just to Dangote and to his investments or to her investments and businesses. But it's a major demand, actually. For me, it's a major demand.
Now, in the technicalities of the law, this case had to be adjourned because Dangote allegedly failed to file the originating summons to the NNPCL and NMDPR. Is it an oversight in your case, or?
I can't say.
Well,
but I think if it's something that serious that you're seeking for 100 billion, I believe you want to cross your T's and dot your I's. So I don't know. Maybe just.
You feel like it's one of those
smart moves, yeah. Just
to drag the issues.
Or to bring some, to draw the attention of the public that something needs to be looked at here. I don't know. I can't hold brief for them, but I believe if I have 100 billion suit against you, I believe I want to make sure that thing gets over quickly so that I can lay my hand on that money.
Now, talking about the public, which is of most interest, Nigerians are kind of worried, especially with the hike in the ex-depo price. Now, it's coming at a time when Nigerians were told, you and I know, that there's now an arrangement where it's a naira for crude deal, and the dollarization of that whole market dynamics has been set aside. But to hear now that this ex-depo price is occasioned by the global price of crude and the exchange rate, I don't know if it's far-reaching to take Nigerians for a ride in this discussion.
I will coin your own words and say it's a ride that has gone on for too long, and it's too rough for us. And we should tell ourselves this, that it's too rough. We can't continue to sustain this. There is no explanation for this. The only explanation does not even hold water anymore. We said it was a whole public thing. Dangote needed to get crude and it needed to be naira. I think at a point there was something that needed to be changed in one of our major policies as a country in order to make that happen. And only for us all to kind of champion it and kind of come around it, and then he got it. And then come back again and tell us that due to the international oil prices that we're having issues. Are you not buying this thing in our very backyard here? How do we get into the international oil, discussion again? So I think there should be a second look and a second discussion, or maybe somebody should call the attention and say, hey, this is not what we were promised. And then maybe let's go back again and check where is the issue of international oil price again coming up from. And then maybe from there we'll talk about other issues again that are also rising within that sphere. But so long as there's that the crude oil that is being refined within Nigeria is bought in the naira, I believe it should crash down to a point that we'll be talking about seeing maybe double digit in the very least. But here we are still talking about this. The first time I came across that headline, I was like, so what went wrong? Is it that we got something wrong in the matrix or something like that? I believe that no. If we're getting this crude in our own home and then we are refining it in our own in country, then whatsoever it is, we should be able to manage it. And that's where I think maybe we'll talk about that a little later. But people talk about energy independence or energy independence, yes, in the sense that you have energy security. The prices of energy does not fluctuate as an individual or a corporation sees fit, or based on international or local, no, based on international trends. This should be something that the Nigerian government should look at very critically. If there's something wrong in the arrangement that was made in the Naira for crude arrangement, maybe it should be reshuffled, because again, if we go back to the dollar for crude arrangement, it pays us better, as a people. So maybe we should go back to that again.
Now, let's talk about the place of reserves, oil reserves, because even if you look at the data available to us, now we're told that Brent crude has risen by 15%, and Nigerian crude is basically getting premium across the world. Yes. Many are asking, didn't he have room for reserve? Because just when we're looking at the price of a barrel jumping from $70 to $82, it is also taking a toll on the price, jumping from 899 naira to about 910 naira when we talk about the Nigerian context. So in the place of reserve, he's the largest single train refinery in the world.
So he should have the largest reserve again. So I believe you now see the trend. However, all of this boils down to just that single fact that you have a major monopoly. And it's going to be more and more evident as the days goes by. And this monopoly is not healthy for us. It's not healthy at all. It means that for any excuse that he could find, he could just throw up one new thing and then get all of us again back to where we're trying to get from. So we should actually look at whatsoever the arrangements were. I will repeat this again. Whatsoever the arrangements were that got us to this discussion, maybe it should be revisited. We talk about the largest reservoirs, which we believe he should have. If you have the largest refinery on the African continent, I believe you should also have the largest reservoirs. I don't know the size of his reservoirs. I believe those that have done the visits should be able to tell us. But then to take all of us for a ride, that every time, maybe, let me just put this at like a typical businessman would. I have a store. It's all stocked with things I bought from the market. Maybe I bought them when they were a little bit high. Now the price is low. I want to just sell them at the price and then just get away with my capital so that I don't get into trouble. But then again, what if I bought them when the price is low and now the prices are picking up? Will I immediately jump back to the market and say, hey, I bought it at a low price, let me sell it at a low price? You want to sell it at the premium so that I make good profit. And if that is the mentality, if that should be, I'm not preempting now, but should it be the case with this refinery, then we have a lot more to discuss in the days ahead, because it means that a lot of things will have to still come up again. So I will strictly and seriously encourage that we should have more independent players in the refining sector. No matter how small, maybe it's the modular refineries, we should have some so that we can kind of cut some of the excesses of this single, big elephant in the room kind of.
Now, in his defense, looking at the statement from the refinery, they talked about shouldering the cost of these fluctuations in the global market, and they said they're only increasing theirs by 5%, whereas the price has jumped by 50%. Yeah. Now, even looking at it from that angle, in terms of the ex-depot price, my concern and worries in terms of the pump price for Nigerians.
For Nigerians, that's what I'm talking about still.
Because now we're looking at this crude for Naira deal, we're looking at the coming on board of Warrior and Port Harcourt refinery. But if the pump price is still well above the margin of 1,000 Naira, what's the benefit of being a producing nation? No,
we didn't get anything. That's exactly my point. It means the Nigerian public, all of us are trying to chat, we are routing and championing this whole thing. It means that we got a very bad deal. Maybe it was shrouded in some kind of mystery that, we didn't get the information. But it means that the Nigerian public did not get anything. There was no reprieve. There was no relief. There was no nothing. The price is still high, and you're telling me that is the, and I allowed, okay, maybe I should use it this way. I allowed my country to give you a deal that is tailor-made for you in order that I might get something, and then you come back and you tell me that, come on, because of the international price, that you're raising 5%, but your 5% that you're raising is at the dollar rate. It's not the Naira 5%. And that dollar 5% you're raising is a huge lot. To me, I'm still paying even more than what I was paying when I campaigned that you should get what you're looking for to get your business going. So it's a very bad deal for us as a people. And maybe we should all come up and say, hey, it's okay.
Let's look at the role of the NNPCL as the sole importer of this product as well, and how it rubs off on Nigerians, because they put out the price templates early last year, changed that price template again, and then people accuse them of still being a player whilst they ought to be a regulator in the industry. The NNPCL under Alhaji Miele Kyari also received some conversations on the line of him clocking 60, and many talking about probably needing another hand to run its affairs. So there's a lot of talking points when it comes to the NNPCL. Let's get your thoughts.
The NNPC is wearing 2 or even 3 caps, and I think that's where our problems are. One of the former vice presidents of Nigeria said something, and I believe that is one of the things that is bedeviling us. And he said the over-centralization of issues and activities. You cannot be a regulator and a player. You cannot be the referee and also the player and the spectator and all of that in the same game. It's highly unlikely. It is probably impossible. However, this is exactly what the NNPC tried to do. Remember that at the end of the day, the NNPC is headed by one individual, and whatsoever information that comes to his table, he's going to respond to them according to what arrives at his table. And knowing this, it means that if the regulatory arm of the NNPC is saying there's something wrong with the distribution or with the downstream or upstream or whatsoever of the streams that that may be on the table at the time, it is up to him to see how he could balance this whole thing. And that should not be a dilemma that you should throw at any well-meaning or serious-thinking administrator. If he's a regulator, he should be a regulator. If he's a player, he should be a player, and all of that. So, while I won't say anything as far as he clocking 60 and needing an extra hand and all of that. I won't say anything about those. But I believe that it is going to be not too long from now. We should look at, as a people, the present administration, as it were, should look at a way of maybe decentralizing. Let the regulatory aspects be a whole thing on its own, and let the other player aspect be a whole thing of its own. And I think that will, even though it has been a back and forth conversation as far as I know, the privatization and the reversal of privatization of refineries and all of that, these have continued to happen, but I believe it's a conversation that should continue. A time should be when we are able to just, get the NNPC. If it's going to be a regulator, it should be a full-fledged, regulator, without any of these back and forth we keep having. And the same thing happens in other aspects of our national life, especially at the federal level, state and local government levels even. We see this happen over and over again. For example, maybe I should let's say education. You have a Ministry of Education that is both running schools and again at the same time is regulating schools. So of course you're going to have a conflict. And this is what we're also seeing in the NNPC, and it continues even into other sectors. The Federal Ministry of maybe let's say Works and Housing, or Federal Ministry of Works and all of that. You're building roads and then you're also regulating roads. Come on, how does it work? I wonder how those guys wear those caps, and maybe someday I'll get to have a feel of it.
Well, let's also talk about it in the context of what's happening with our 2025 budget. A lot of persons have dubbed the budget largely optimistic, and when you look at these mainstay of the economy being oil, and the fact that even on our OPEC quota we're failing to meet the projections, does it somewhat worry you that the budget is well in deficit of over 13 billion when you look at the margins, and with this disputes in-house, because if the NNPCL and NMDPR are in a suit with one of the biggest hopes Nigerians have, do you think that it somewhat spells doom? I don't want to be the prophet of doom
in this case.
This case.
And maybe your projections won't be too far from the reality. But again, we also look at within the past 2-3 administrations, has it been different? We have this single mono economy kind of, the major player in oil, and then the internally generated revenues that we have and all of that. Of course, we have been running on deficit for quite a while, and with the way we are going, it seems that we'll not be leaving it anytime soon, especially when the major chunk of our of what we do, of our budget, is running either for you're talking about security, you're talking about debt servicing, you're talking about things like that. How much of the monies we really budget and how, especially when we look at the budget performance, let's say 2024, 2023, when we look at the budget performance, how much actually went to anything that was really, really productive? How, that was kind of, that's really going to get something on the table for tomorrow. How much of our money is in our budgets and in our actually, when we do the actual performances, how much do we really spend on maybe not education per se, but funds that will go into the hands of the Nigerian on the street, and he's able to bring his ideas to life, and then he's able to sell those ideas and then be able to generate whatsoever for himself and for the economy, pay his taxes and all of those. How much do we really do? You see that we are in a loop that we've got to find a way to get out of it, and we've got to find a way very, very fast. We're talking of 13% as it is right now, but it's much more than that. 13% is what we are able to kind of, let me say, see. That's what's on the table. But then if you do more of the studies, you break down this whole of our budgets within the past 3-4 administrations, you see that it's much, much higher than that. Maybe you talk about local, you talk about the debt that's the local one, and I talk about the foreign debts. It's quite a huge amount. You're talking about maybe nearly 30 to 40% of whatsoever you're budgeting, and it's going into maybe paying off loans, paying bonds, paying all of that. At the end of the day, what's on the table that every other person is going to use right now? Apart from all of this, security has become a huge thing that we've got to take care of, and take care of very fast. For me, I would say we're going too slow. Our budget is optimistic, yes, but then what will eventually get to produce the income for next year's budget? So 2026 budget, or will it still be running on the whole, just petroleum being the mainstay, and then the internet generated revenue, which is what we're also taxing ourselves at the ports and also some of the small businesses we do around? Is that what will generate the kind of revenue we need to get ourselves out of where we are? We're talking about removing 70 million people out of poverty. I think that was one of the headlines I saw somewhere. Now, if you're going to get 70 million people out of poverty, where are you going to get that money from when up to 20 or more percent of your total budget is going to pay debts? And that is the things that we need to be talking about. That's the things we need to be hearing on the floor of the National Assembly. Those are the things we need to be seeing the president talking about. How do we do these things in order that our budget is more robust and we are cutting down our debts so that we can become more self-sufficient as time goes on? It's all over the place. Go on the street right now. There's so much work to be done, and yet there's no money to do those work because most of our funds are going to pay our debts. So we've got to cut ourselves, somewhere and try to balance this and say, no, we've got to stop this and come back and begin to develop ourselves. And as I was coming to the studio this morning, I had an epiphany, if you want to call it. I had a thought. And the thought is this: if I want to get myself as an individual out of debt, how do I do that? I've got to first sit down and tell myself the truth. I may not be able to
make lifestyle adjustments.
Make serious adjustments. I can't continue to do, spend big, and I have a little, small income, and I expect that I was going to get out of debt. Of course, no. I've got to cut down. Maybe I've got to have a family gathering of all my children, and even if they are toddlers, and say, hey, there's going to be some change around here. We've got to get out of debt. We need to begin to do things to produce the wealth that we need for tomorrow. Now, that is some kind of conversation that need to be had, both with myself and then with my family or whoever is are dependent on me. And then over time, we see how we get ourselves out of debt. And then try not to get into more debt. But see what we do. A few years ago, we got ourselves out of the Paris Club and not all that debts, with a lot of publicity and fanfare and all of that. And just a few years again down the line, here we are. Maybe even worse than where we were then, because the dollar was not even as strong as it is now. And we are still going out to get more. I'm very sure that within now and the end of this year, you're going to hear there's going to be supplementary budget, there's going to be application to, to the National Assembly to approve for the president to go and get more debt. Maybe China this time, or maybe one other country next time. And somehow, the National Assembly we go and we sign those things. But tomorrow, we're going to be paying that. And we are not thinking of how do we generate this money. You can't tax people to pay. You can't use tax to
as
pay
a major source of generating
revenue, and the income now is going to pay debt. Come on, it doesn't work that way.
Now the challenge is some of the misgivings of past administrations. Just to digress a little, news making the rounds now is centered on the $6 billion Mambila Power Project and the lawsuit ongoing in Paris with ex-presidents Muhammadu Buhari, Olusegun Obasanjo, all to take the stand in this huge case. Many people say they visited the Mambila Power Project and there's little to write home about. Now, the issue is not the complacency, it's also the fact that this might see some big names being shamed. What do we make of these misgivings of past administrations and shaping that energy independence you're about to talk about whilst we're talking earlier?
Yeah. I don't want to throw myself on that because those are some names that can really get you crushed. Sorry to say that on television, but I don't really want to throw myself into that. But let's talk about it from a more broad or from a more, open perspective. You talk about a 6 billion naira power project. Power project situated in Mambila. We know it was huge, expensive, and all of that. But now the question is, how many of us have gone up there to see the work that was done? How many of us will be able to pinpoint and say, I visited the power project and I saw what it is, and all of those things? A few I have. I haven't been there myself, but I had the privilege of having somebody that went there and did some kind of video and shared with me, and of what the power project looks like. Of course, as far as we know, it's there for the part that have been done, because it's supposed to be in kind of stages. For the parts that have been constructed, it's there, and to a large extent, it's working. However, again, we come to that age-old problem that we have. The monies that was spent on the power project and the actual construction and the actual cost of what is on the ground, can we marry them? You told me you're going to get a 20 horsepower. I was going to pay an amount. I got to write off some very huge guarantees for you. You got some money, you got to the market, and then you came back home. Yes, you brought me a car, but when I looked under the hood, it was a 16 horsepower. So how do I reconcile that? So if some names have been dragged into, to take the stand and then to make, I believe they should go and clear their names. That's just the much I can say. I believe they should go clear their names, and I believe that they're not going to have any issues at all. And the reason being that I'm sure they did the right thing then, and I believe that they're going to do the right thing now. So that's the much I can say on this.
Well, it all boils back to where we want to go as a nation, because it's becoming a culture. Not to even talk about the Nigerian Air Project and the whole charade of renting it, but it almost becomes a culture where our credibility or even our intent and purpose in terms of policy formulations, implementation, monitoring and evaluation is, as a country, bringing it back to the cabals, much like Dangote will call them in the oil sector. What does this do for the public trust and confidence?
Now, is there a public trust actually? Is the public in Nigeria, sorry, I don't know how much of liberty I have, but
feel free, please.
Does the public in Nigeria really have a say? Does the public really hold its leaders to any form of accountability at all? Those are things that I believe we as the public should ask ourselves very critically. You're talking about credibility. The question is to who? The public is busy trying to get a meal on the table. The public is trying to get food to eat. The public is trying to pay school fees and get out of debt. The public is just trying to edge and scratch a living. In fact, the public is trying to get out of the country. Sorry to use that expression.
Very true.
But I'm sure you understand what I mean. The country is on the move. Or the public, is on the move now. When we talk about credibility and all of that, we should remember that the credibility first should be to ourselves, should be to each other. And then before the world would begin to adjudge us to be credible for whatsoever we're trying to get. The public in Nigeria truly, like Sonny Okosun and the rest of them would say in time past, and it seems to be the reality up to now. Which way? What do we really want? Where do we really want to go? The credibility of our leaders, past, present, and maybe I dare say future, seem to be whatsoever they say, it just flies. We've continued to see the wedding or the marriage between the National Assembly and the presidency, especially in this democratic era. We continue to see that. I, as a spectator in this whole thing, I've continued to see that as, come on, we could do better than this. How many times have we got, apart from a few knocks that we had here and there, how many times have we got leaders in the past, especially the highest arc of the Nigerian leadership, which is the presidency or the president himself? How many times have we had the president, try to explain himself or all of that to the National Assembly? How many times have we had the National Assembly to hold our leaders accountable? Because you cannot build credibility without accountability. It does not work. if everything that I say, just gets a pass, then it's like an alpha and omega syndrome. It's like the God syndrome, and like that. So, of course, the moment it leaves our cultural setup and leave our own local setup and it goes out of Nigeria or it goes to other places where they take those matters a little bit more seriously, we realize that we don't seem to have a lot of credibility after all. But because we, in our own context, our cultural, religious, and other contexts, have made it in such a way that we can't even challenge. The public can't even ask some kind of questions. And even when you start asking some kind of question, the time it will take for me to explain to you why I'm asking this question, the need for the answer had already passed. Maybe for me to mobilize, maybe say some young guys to get to National Assembly and say, hey, we've got to get an answer on this matter. The matter have become irrelevant. Maybe there have been another bomb blast somewhere, something have taken the national interest and it's all gone. The Unity Fountain at some point, some of us thought that would be the place where people will be able to rally around and say, we want to ask some questions. We've got to get some answers. But today it's already fenced off and you can't even go there to stand and say anything. So where do we build the credibility? Where do our leaders build their credibilities from? And that's why when we leave this setup, when we leave this, let me say, this context, and you travel out of the country and you meet some of our leaders, they are just another person on the street. You just pass. But then here, they are the alpha and the omega. You can't ask questions. You can't do anything. So how do we build credibility for our leaders? And so when they are being called around to international courts and all of that to go answer cases, of course, here it's impossible.
But someone's are issued here.
Nobody responds to it. It doesn't work. But there you have to, in one way or the other, go answer, go clear yourself. And that is where we have. If it were, how many of the international contracts that we signed or whatsoever agreements that we make that the legal framework allows that the cases should be treated in Nigeria? And this is why they are going to Peru. Because the companies that handled that and did the financing and all of that, they know that something like this will happen and it has continued to happen. So whenever they draw any kind of contract, they say the laws that will govern this is not going to be in Nigeria. And so they drag all of us outside of Nigeria and begin to do this public shaming that you tried to allude to earlier. So that's, I think, as far as I understand it, that's where our problem is. The public can't even ask questions. The public seem not to be united enough to be able to ask questions. Let me use one of the expressions of one media personality here in Abuja that I know of, and he will say that we are a mass. We are a masses that cannot form a mass. We are a public that cannot form a mass to press our point forward. And I think that is another issue which now we as the citizenry, we need to begin to ask questions and begin to hold our leaders accountable, and that's the only way they can build credibility.
Now, in the position of leaders being able to convey their policy ideas and also see that it brings about better life for their people, I was listening to the budget defense by the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, and he was very adamant that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's policies are looking to reduce poverty and stabilize the economy with the promise that inflation will be brought to 15% within a calendar year. A lot of economic analysts I've spoken to have doubted the possibility of achieving that, especially with the removal of subsidy and the flotation of the naira. Not to sound too doubtful, but with the way the economy is going on, the projections that prices will continue to rise, occasioned by a hike in the price of PMS, do you see that inflation rate dropping?
I don't want to say much on this because eventually time will tell whether it will work or it won't work. But I believe they should listen. The coordinating minister of the economy and even the present administration and all of those that run within that administration, they should listen. Sometimes the sound or the loud sounds at that level seem to make it difficult for you to listen. But I think they should listen. If you ask me as an individual, another jack on the road, I'll tell you, it's likely impossible. However, I don't know the magic trick that they have up their sleeve, and I don't know how they're going to do that. But then time will just have to vindicate them. But they should listen, because everybody that's telling you that, hey, calm down, this optimism that you're trying to show is not meeting up with the reality on the ground. I think you should take a listen to them and say, okay, if that should be the case, then maybe we should realign our figures. Maybe we should be more realistic and not raise people's hope unnecessarily, and then that shit terribly. So I would not say so much on that, because time, of course, the calendar year is just 12 months. We'll survive, we'll be able to get to that point, and then we can come back and ask ourselves whether he was right or wrong. But I believe the minister should listen. He should get down to the street, put his boots on the ground, and really see what's happening down there, and then maybe get back to his office and then realign his optimism and his calculations. Maybe we'll have something that's a little bit more within the spheres of reality. That's much I can say on this.
Now, let's bring this conversation to the concluding segment, and this is off the back of a lot of anxiety that has been captured by media outlets following the inauguration of Mr. Donald Trump as the 47th president of the U.S. yesterday, and how this impacts on Nigeria. People looked at it in terms of even the oil industry, with some certain policy directions, executive orders being signed. I'll look at some of the executive orders in a bit, but let's talk about the overarching potential impact on Nigeria. Do you think that the coming on board of President Donald Trump for his second missionary journey, if I can use that phrase, would be more of a gospel towards Nigeria or more of a persecution in some sort?
It could be both. Sorry to take the middle ground. It could be both for some very good things and also for some very terrible ones. I think during his last stint as a president, he helped us, get our foot into the Tucano thing and trying to see how we could bring the insecurities at the time under control. I think he did some good for us then. The question is how we did for ourselves. The question, as I see it, is not whether what Donald Trump is going to do, but rather what we are going to do. What do we have to offer? What is it that's on the table that is going to get his attention down here? I think that's just it. Because again, his administration have come, with a lot of promises on his own part too. If you have read the speech he gave or maybe listened to it, he's, a lot of things he's trying to push forward, within a simultaneous push on so many fronts to kind of see he keeps the promise he made during his campaign and all of that to get America back. He said the golden age for is here and is starting and all of that, and he's trying to push all of this forward. And we as a people should also see what is it that how can we key into some of these policies? What are some of these things that have promise for us, and what are those things that have issues that we need to look at? You mentioned one, the issue of oil. He is taking the bull by the horn with the executive, one of the executive orders that he seemed to be pushing forward, which is the energy security for his own country too. He wants to see how the shale oil, which is something that they have in abundance, should be able to be into the mix of what his own nation also used to power itself. And that also is looking forward to us kind of saying, okay, there's going to be some a crash, because they are one of the major importers of our crude, which is Bonny Light, and they use that quite a lot. But if they're going on that trend, it's also going to be quite a crash. But then again, remember that policies can be developed in an hour, but it could take a lifetime to put them into to get them to the point where you want them to be. So what I'm looking at is, yes, he is here. The anxiety should not be as much as we look at it, because some of these policies are going to take a while before they pick up, and we should be more strategic in how we're going to position ourselves in order to take advantage of his presidency. I think that is just it. We should take advantage of his presidency, and it will be both a gospel and also a persecution. We shouldn't wait until he makes policies that affect us adversely. We should be more proactive and look at, okay, this person is coming into office. How am I going to put myself into, position myself that I am of technical advantage, and then I'll have to be in the conversation whatsoever they may be. I think that is where we should be looking at more critically.
Now, former envoy Professor Akinyemi made headlines this morning. He was blowing hot, was condemning Nigerians' position to accept a BRICS partner status, talking about the fact that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should not put himself in any way to be seen to confront President Donald Trump. I don't know, in terms of that bilateral relationship, President Donald Trump also signed an executive order this morning that a lot of persons were kind of shocked that the US has pulled out from the World Health Organization. Nigeria is not even looking to toe that part, especially with our deficit in the health sector. Do you think that both presidents might find common ground?
For for a sovereign nation like Nigeria and also the United States, there's always a common ground. There will always be common grounds. However, there should and will always again be some areas of
conflict of
interest. So we are a sovereign nation. We should look at what is to our advantage. If you look at everything that Donald Trump has said and done, he's just looking for everything that is to America's advantage. He's not looking at any other thing. He's just looking at what is to the advantage of his country. Now, the question our president should be asking himself is not whether he's going to be on a collusion course with Donald Trump. It should be, what will be the best for Nigeria first? Any other thing we look at is, as far as I know, is secondary. The first thing first, the two presidents eye to eye. What is best for our country is the first thing. And if what is best for us seems to put us against Donald Trump as a president of his own country, then I think there's nothing that is wrong with that. And if what is best for us is actually what will put us on his good books, then there's nothing that's wrong with that. But we should for no reason or for any moment think that in order for us to please him or to please the administration, we're going to downplay what is best for our country. If we told that part, we're already in serious trouble. And that is how I judge the comment by Akumi and others, because we cannot put ourselves at disadvantage so that we can please his administration. Nigeria is going to continue to exist, and the United States of America also continue to exist. So, but we should look at what is best for us. Because what's best for us may not be, maybe what's best for us at this point, maybe the BRICS partnership. Then we should go for it. But if it is not best for us, if what is best for us is a partnership with the United States, then we should pursue that. But we shouldn't try that want to please this person, no matter how big or mighty they are. They are a sovereign nation. We are a sovereign nation. We should look for what's the best interest of our citizens. I think that's just it.
And another major talking point is the executive order that President Donald Trump just signed, receding birthright status for persons who intend to always go on what they call it, maternal vacations. I think that's how they call it, and have their children in the US.
And then they just automatically become citizens.
Now he's signed the executive order removing that right.
He is going to have a lot of fight. Not from Nigerians, of course. We don't have the power to fight him on that. But he's going to have a lot of issues to do that. Yes, he could sign any order. In fact, he could sign an order to give $1 billion to every American citizen. He could sign it. But then the actual practice is going to be quite a problem.
By count, we hear 78 of the decisions taken by former President Joe Biden are going to be rescinded.
Yeah, just like his own, when Joe Biden came into office, he also rescinded most of his own. So it's like that. It's executive orders. But then he's going to have to answer to courts. He's going to answer to citizens. He's going to answer to people. Remember that these rights we're talking about is enshrined in their own constitution too.
Because naturalization permits for you to be a citizen of anywhere you're born in and reside for over a period of years.
Time. I think in the UK it's 5 years. In other places it's 2 years, 3 years, and some is just instantaneous, like that. And again, remember that Donald Trump is only the president of the federal. There is still states in the United States, and there are still counties and other administrative. So each of them also have their own laws. They have their own bylaws. They have their own guidelines. So, of course, maybe he could say at the federal level, this won't work again, but it only affect, let's say in Nigeria, it will only affect federal hospitals and all of that. But the states will still have the right to grant or not to grant, and that's just it. So he's going to have to pull through the whole of that mist as he goes forward, because of course he could sign that order, but then he will have to fix something in their amendments in their own form of what we call the constitution, or their own policies again, because it's entrenched there. So he will have to go back and fix that in order to cancel it. But remember that this seemed to be very popular with a lot of the citizens in the United States. But I still want to call their attention to something. Almost everybody in America came there either came down there. It's only I think the indigenous people that we know as much as the people that are called the Indians, or I don't know the name they call them now, but they say they no longer Red Indians, so there's a name for them. I just don't get it. I think, but every other person came from somewhere.
Talking about immigration.
Exactly.
Now, I like the line you used there. He would face quite a fight, not particularly from Nigerians.
No, not
another fight that he would face from a majority of Americans who consider themselves woke are the LGBTQ plus community, because he says right now the United States would only be acknowledging
2 genders. Two gender, the male and the female. Yes, he's going to also have that appeal tax. He's going to have to meander through it and then find a way of doing it. But I remember that he's the president of the federal, like I already said. It's his thing to do what he wants to do with the federal. But
it's going to be an interesting time, though.
Very, very interesting. I look forward to see how it's going to play out, actually. When I was going all of that, I was like, okay, this is going to be quite some, it's going to be a lot of storms all over the place.
Once again, I must thank you. We've come full circle on our conversation. It's
Thank
been an
you very
interesting
much.
time also having this dialogue with you on this critical issues in the news. We appreciate you for making our time on short notice
Thank you
to
very
grace our
much.
invitation.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.